Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Community. I'm so excited because this episode I feel is like a little bit of like a kismet episode.
Yes.
I was telling the girls earlier today who we're here with, they were like, "How did you meet Jess?" And I'm like, "This is so random." But last time I was in California, I like stood next to her at an event, and then she turned out to like co-own this business that I admire so much and I've heard so much, and it's such a like I feel like such a Canadian legacy business, and so. Jess, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I love a kismet meeting.
Yeah. Well, Jess, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Tell me a little bit about like your entrepreneurship journey and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm Jess Hunichen. I'm the co-founder of Shine Talent Group, The Thread, Love and Money Ventures, all separate things, not one big weird long name. So I feel like I started my actual entrepreneurial journey quite young. I started my very first business, which was Honey PR. My last name's Hunichen and it's a mouthful, so I always people just called me Jess Honey. So Honey PR was my first little baby. I started it right out of school, which was, I don't know, I had like the ballsiness, I guess, of a 21-year-old. So I started that fresh out of school and did it for about 3 or so years, and then became very aware that I was very young and only knew what I knew, only knew who I knew. Yeah. And I needed to like get different kind of experience. So I switched focus. I stayed in PR, but I switched more towards entertainment. When I should have mentioned this at the beginning, if you had not guessed by now, I'm from Melbourne, Australia. So all of this is in Melbourne. But I worked for 2 major television networks in Australia, one in marketing, one in PR. And then I was called to come to Canada. So I left my whole life in Australia behind.
Were you called by anyone or just yourself?
I was called by a boy.
A boy?
Sorry.
But is this your husband?
No.
Oh
God, no. No, a very nice boy.
Okay.
But like not
out.
like my person.
Yeah.
I think honestly, like when I really look back now, I think I was just looking for a change.
Yeah.
You know,
fair.
when you look back and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, you little dum-dum. But now when I look back, I'm like, I think I was meant to do it. The like reason that I went was like not the right reason necessarily, but it all just kind of worked out.
Totally.
So I moved to Toronto in like the dead of a winter, having no idea what I was in for. Very much expected that I would just get a job in PR. How hard can it be was my attitude. Turns out very hard. Turns out they want you to like know the media and what the media landscape is in a country when you want to work in PR. So I knew nothing. So I kind of like hunted around and figured that like I would just land a job in PR, but it really didn't work out for me at all. So I decided to kind of change tracks completely. I'd always had like a small desire to be a wedding planner. I kind of went to university thinking I would be a wedding planner.
Okay.
Lover of love and just like fun things. So thought I would do that. When I moved to Toronto, I was like, I'm going to be a wedding planner. Maybe this is my time. And I researched every wedding planning company in Toronto. I found 2 that I was like, this is my jam. I met both of them. One of them was like, I have all of the consultants I need, but you sound like you're much better suited to PR anyway. I've passed your details on to a friend of mine. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm done with PR. But her friend reached out like a couple of hours later. I met her the next week. We started working together that day. She's my business partner of 10 years now.
Wow.
So that very much worked out beautifully. And then the other wedding planner I went and met with, this is just more of a fun personal story, but she was like, will you help me with some styling every now and then? I was like, yes, please. I am doing nothing. Like I need to work. And I met her friend. She was like, there'll be a florist there. You're going to work with her. I'm like, done. We met, became very good friends. And that, like, as I said, I moved in the February. And by that Christmas, the boyfriend that I'd moved for was no longer. And she was like, what are you doing for the holidays? And I was like, I'm all alone. It's the saddest story. And she was like, are you going to go home? And I'm like, I can't. My family will be like, Jessica, you must stay. You're not there for the boy anymore. Like, you've got to stay here. And she was like, why don't you come and spend Christmas with my family? And I was like, okay, brand new friend. Like, I'm in. And she was like, I just like apologize in advance. My brother, he'll hit on you. Just ignore him immediately. And I was like, done, not interested. Like, I got this. And so I went out for Christmas. It was lovely. Met her brother, and we're married now. So
okay, this all worked out. This
it
move
all
to
worked
Canada
out like
all worked
really
out.
beautifully for me.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so met through these two wedding planners, met my business partner and my husband, and the rest is history. And he's a good Canadian boy, but I dragged him down to LA earlier this year. So we're here now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about the start of Shine, because I'm kind of curious, like, you know, PR and influence, like definitely some connection, right?
For sure.
But kind of how did that get all started?
Yeah, so Emily and I, so when I met her and when I mentioned like we kind of started working together that day, she was freelance PR, had come from a small agency, then a really big agency, then started freelancing when she had her babies. She was freelance when I met her, and as anyone who freelances, I'm sure there's many in this community, you know that like you kind of have to say yes to everything, because you're like, oh, if I say no to this, what if I don't get the next job, right? So you're a constant yes man. And so when I met her, she just had like a little bit too much work and was like, will you like do some of this with me? And I was like, absolutely. And so we started working together, and we started Shine PR first. So we did that a couple of months after we met. And then we're like, there's something like in the influencer industry, like it's not really touched Canada yet, but for me, like coming from Australia, I was like, there's tons of agencies in Australia that are representing talent, and I was like, no one's really doing that here. So we started just by having some conversations with influencers, or like at the time bloggers, really.
Yeah.
So like the influencer community and PR agencies and brands. And what we heard really across the board was the influencers again, this is 10 years ago, right? Like I always joke that influencer years are like dog years. Like they, 1 is 7. But all of the influencers were like, I don't understand. I don't know my value. I feel really uncomfortable asking for money. I don't know how to get paid, but I know that I'm doing something that they want.
Yeah.
And all of the brands and agencies were saying, we want to work with influencers, but we don't know how to help them deliver our key messages in a way that will like resonate with their audience and really like connect with their audience. So coming from PR background, where really all you do is like figure out ways to like integrate and weave a story into kind of an existing content pillars, we were like, we know how to do this. So we kind of just we're like, we can sit in the middle. We see the value of the influencer side really well. We know what the brands and agencies need. So there's kind of a nice sweet spot here. So we started in Canada in 2015, and it was, I remember when we got our first deal that was $1,000, and I was like, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it. Like we're here, we did it, like success. And so we kept the PR side of the business for a couple of years. I think it's hard to remember now, but it was a couple of years. And then we, it kind of just got to a point where originally where we'd thought the influencer side would be, we're like, in the best world, in the best case scenario, this might cover one very junior person's salary. That was kind of what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
And the idea really was that the influencer division would drive PR work. Yeah. That was the intention. And it did, but it drove so much work on its own.
Yeah.
And we were like, I don't think we really need to do PR anymore. Like I love PR. I will like always love PR, but it's hard. Anyone who's worked in PR client, like if you have the best month in the world for a client, they're like, what's next? It's a constant, let's do bigger and better, which is fair. Of course, they want that for their brands. But I think it just like wasn't feeling like it was us anymore.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're like, let's let go of the PR side. We'll keep doing, at the time with Shine Influencers, let's keep like focusing all our eggs in this basket. And yeah, a couple of years after that, we opened the office. First, we opened an office in Texas, a flop, a really good like tester case that like did not work well for us.
Even though your business was mostly based in Canada?
It was all based in Canada. And we were like, we need to open an office in the US. And our thought behind Texas was LA and New York felt too big.
Right.
They are, obviously, they're huge cities. And we're like, are we ready? And for whatever reason at that time, we just kept like, everyone was talking about Texas. There was like something going on. There was like, obviously there's huge tax breaks in Texas. Huge corporations were moving their headquarters to Texas.
Right.
And we're like, maybe that's where we're meant to be. We officially opened it, made a big splash about it. And again, I've like blanked this out from my memory, to be honest. So I can't, yeah. And like I'm so glad we did it. It was an absolute fail. Like there's no other like way to describe it in my mind. But it allowed us to open so successfully in LA because I was like, okay, I know everything we did wrong. Let's just do the opposite of that and it will be a success here. And it was. So I think we're like, again, like, I don't know, failure is so subjective, I guess. But like it was just like, it was what we needed to do. I don't think we could have afforded a fail in LA, but we could somehow afford the fail in Texas.
Yeah, like it was easier to come back from.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So tell me, like, in terms of influencers, like, why are you passionate about influencers and what do you think the landscape looks like today?
Yeah, so like a world apart from when we first started, no longer like getting real hype for $1,000 deal.
Well, like I've only had my agency for 4 years, like our social media, and even like I remember Reels came out like a month in and we were like, no.
Yeah.
No. And now it's like we couldn't get away with not doing Reels for people, right? So it's like things change so much.
It's constantly changing. So I think if you struggle with stability, it's hard.
Yeah.
I thrive in the unknown. So like I'm like pretty malleable as a person. So that doesn't bother me, but it certainly is constantly evolving. I think though I don't know if this is the perception from the outside, but my experience in this industry, has been that it's so collaborative. Like I just, as I was waiting to come inside here, I was sending a voice note to another agency owner who was like, well, how would you deal with this? I'm like, yeah. And like now I'm like a dinosaur in the industry. So I've been around a while. So I'm very fortunate to be connected with tons of other agencies. Many of them new. I have another, like on my way back from here today, I have a call with another agency owner. So like, it's really collaborative. And I think that like helps all of us. I think where you could look at it as really competitive and as like, we all do the same thing at the end of the day, like or a similar variation of it. You could look at that as being really competitive, or I think we've chosen to look at it as like together we could collectively raise the bar here. We can push for better payment terms. We can push for more standardization. We can help each other make this industry as a whole better. This, like, I think reports are saying this industry will be worth 500 billion with a B, 500 billion by 2027. Like, there's enough for all of us to like make a decent amount of money in here and to kind of share that love. So I love that about this industry. Like I love how collaborative it is. And I think in terms of the talent that we represent, like that's just always been so fun for me. Like I find it very fun to discover new people. I find it fun to like see potential in people. Especially like this really happened a little more when we started, but I remember when we started a company we used to run called the BodCon. I know you and I talked about that a little bit. If you're Canadian, maybe you know if you're in the US too. But the BodCon is a virtual conference series on all things body confidence, body positivity, self-love, for those who don't know. And there are a few talent that I scouted really, really early days for that. Brinta is one of my favorites. She's Canadian. I saw Brinta online. She had a couple of thousand followers, and I reached out to her and I was like, I really want you to speak at this event. And she was like, ma'am, why? And I was like, I think your voice is really interesting. I think you have a really unique perspective. I love what you're talking about. And I just believe that you can do it. And she was like, very hesitantly, like, okay. And I was like, I got you. Like, I will hold your hand through this. Like, I think you're amazing. And I really want to like push you to do this. And she did. She signed with us not long after. Her following like really skyrocketed after that, and we still represent her now. And I just like, it's so cool when I see things like that. I'm like, oh, you really did have something important to say. And like, it's all her voice and all of those things. But sometimes people need like a gentle kind of like push in the right direction, right? So I think that like that will always like get me a little giddy and keep me very excited. And we just like we see that happen. I see the team like have that excitement for people, and it makes me really just like makes me happy. So yeah, I love it.
What has been the like when you look back on you know, you represent like some of, I think, Canada's especially like greatest influencers.
I agree,
and
obviously.
yeah, obviously. You're not gonna fight me on it. And we share some clients,
Yeah.
which is so great. And I like that's why I was so excited to meet you. And I've heard so many wonderful things about you and have met many of your team members.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, what for you is a good influencer?
Oh, that's such a good question. And again, it's so subjective, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone has their own audiences. So
Yeah.
like good to you might not be good to me and to every other person in this room, right? So I think overarchingly, a good influencer is someone who really not only understands their audience and what they're looking for from them, but like genuinely cares about it and wants to provide value. I think that's huge, and it can kind of be slotted into like whether you're a gamer or a mommy blogger or a YouTuber or fitness or whatever your category is. I think that can always kind of be a nice constant thread through it. Like if you really care about the people within this community that you've built, I think you're going to do well.
Yeah, I love that. The reason I ask is because I even see this with podcasters. Like sometimes people will be like, oh, like I don't really have like a huge audience. And I'm like, that's actually doesn't really like matter because you have to like create an audience. Like it takes time. But it's like, but they have these like so engaged people who like buy everything they sell and like
the
are
diehard fans.
Yeah, like so interested in everything that they do that I'm like, oh, like you have huge influence even if they don't feel like they're influencers.
I totally agree. And like people talk about this, like imagine 5,000 people like standing in a room. Like that's a lot of people, you know? And I think it's really the number one question we get asked, or it certainly was in the past, like, how do I grow my audience? And everyone's so hell-bent on that. Like, how do I grow? How do I grow? How do I grow? And I've always kind of been like, you're focusing on the wrong goal. Like, I feel like your audience is here right in front of you and you're trying to look beyond them. I'm like, don't do that. Like, look at who you have, keep like nurture them, create content for them. They'll share it. They'll tell their friends. That it will grow. It will be so much more gradual, but so much more real than like if you're going for those kind of, I don't know, always trying to like go viral or kind of those like quick hitters, I guess is a way to describe it. Like you might get a little spike, and maybe you hold them, but maybe you get a spike and then they go down, you get another spike and it goes down. So I think being so hyper focused on the audience you already have, like don't create for someone you don't have, like keep kind of nurturing that and more of them will come. Like that's natural, but you won't go from 10,000 to 100,000 overnight, but as you grow, like they'll truly be there like for you. Like they're going to be like your people. So just keep creating for them, I think is really important to like not lose sight of that.
Yeah. And it's amazing how I think for so many influencers, like people come with them on journeys. Like, and so, like,
absolutely.
as you transition, like, I think about, like, Birds Papaya Sarah, we live, like, in the same city.
Yeah.
And so I see her everywhere.
Yeah.
And people are obsessed with her. Like, and they're obsessed with every phase of her life.
Everything.
Like, you know, like the baby. And then they're obsessed with, like, her marriage. And they're obsessed with her divorce story and her body. And, like, all of these things. And everyone resonates with her from something a little bit different. And I think that's what's so magical about the online space and, like, where there's a lot of potential for influence is that, like, whatever your story is, people can kind of move with you.
For sure. And I think it's important, and we talk with talent about this all the time with those big transitions. Like, and motherhood is a big one. Like, I think that's the biggest one that we see. The vast majority of our talent are women. Lots of them have been through, you know, motherhood, parenting journeys. And, you know, if you think about going from, let's say I'm a fashion content creator and it's like, okay, now I got this little baby. Like, do they slot into my content as it was before, or does my content shift, and do I bring my audience along with me? And some you will, and some you won't. Like, you know, again, the internet is a weird and wonderful place, where, you know, people will really tell you how they feel about things. Yeah. So that's again, you can kind of take the good and bad with that. But there'll certainly be some people that are like, talk about this baby now. I don't care. And that's like, if you don't have a baby, maybe you don't care about it. So like sometimes people will drop off, but then you'll kind of create this new audience who really care about your baby, who care about motherhood and parenting journeys and things like that. So it's, those transitions are challenging, no question. But I think if you've really like fostered that community and really focused on that, your audience will be so excited for you, and they'll be like, like, I know you've been trying, or I've been so excited for you to have a baby. And, you know, I think you can like get them really on board if you've, you know, kind of, if you've taken them along every step of the way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was at a mutual friend's house with Sarah, and Sarah was telling me about her baby and about how like every day she gets messages being like, more photos, like please more photos, like I like love your baby so much, and it's like bringing joy to all these people. Yeah. And I'm curious for you, Jess. So you kind of brought this up with the like, you know, weird and wonderful place of the internet. It's hard out there. Me and Maria, my business partner, we always say we're like we want to grow an audience, but not too big. Not too big. I don't want any feedback.
Well, you haven't made it until you have haters, right?
Well, I know. We had one hater one time, and I was like, mm-mm.
There you go.
But curious, like, how do you like help your talent through that, and whether like the support you provide, but like, what's kind of your mindset around it?
It's hard. Like, we talk to our talent managers all the time, and we're like, you are mini untrained therapists.
Yeah.
You know, and like, it's like the internet it's a really challenging place to exist, and there's not a lot of resources available, and again, there's not a lot of like guidelines around like what, like some things that you're allowed to say and then versus the things you're not allowed to say. I'm like, this doesn't quite match up. Like, it's very strange. And I think the amount of like bullying that goes on online is really scary. And with content creators, because you've had this window into their lives, I think people think that means the door is open for them too. Like, rather than just being able to like observe, they're like, oh no, I'm in. Like, I'm deserving now of every single detail. Yeah. And that's scary. As you said with Sarah, people are like, I want to see Lemmy. I want to see Lemmy. And like, obviously she's like a sweet little angel.
Yeah.
But like, people being like that, like hype to see a child that they don't know, like, is somewhat strange.
No, 100%.
Right?
Like, I'll
like,
have friends who will see her like at a grocery store, and they'll be like, oh, I took this picture of her, and I'm like, that's so weird.
It's so weird.
But I've never been like that. I've never been like a girly kind of person.
I'm not a fangirly person either. So it's like, it's hard for me to resonate with on a personal level, but I witness a lot of it.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine.
It's scary for talent. Like, I see them now and they like go on vacation. Like, I'm sorry, I can't share until like we've left. And I know that's not out of like being dramatic. That's out of like, I've had a bad experience and I've learned from it, which like, that's scary.
Yeah.
So I think influencers now are being like a lot more guarded with some of their personal stuff, and you see a lot of talent like not sharing their kids and not wanting to share faces online. I think that will become the norm.
Yeah.
Because it's scary, and like, the internet is forever. You don't know who's going to do what with what content, and there's some interesting folks out there, you know. So I think it's people, like, I would caution people to like be more careful than not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you have any interest in growing like your following and being an influencer yourself?
No, I've always been, even from like when I was a little kid, I was always like behind. Like, I look back on like family videos now, and it's so funny to watch because like I always wanted to be the camera. I always wanted to be like in charge of production, and like every now and then you'd like see me stomp out, and I was like such a bossy little brat. And it worked out for me for sure. Like, I think that was just like, I was just meant to be a leader.
Yeah.
Shouldn't call little girls bossy. But I see these like home videos, and I'd be like, you know, directing everyone where to go. And then every now and then I'd be like, ugh, I'm like 5. And I'm like, that's not right. And you'd see me like march out and be like, get out of the way. And like, shit, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a little brat. So yeah, I never... Like, I like to, like, I post online like the regular kind of person, but no, I've never really had a desire to be on that side.
Yeah.
I mean, financially.
Yeah.
I see how advantageous it can be, but yeah, no, it's never been for me. I'm a behind the camera girly.
Well, it's great to see that there's all different types of people. Like, even I
Totally.
said the same thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't really have like a ton of desires of like love hosting events.
Yeah.
Like, love doing
Love that.
stuff.
I
but
love
yeah.
that. I'm extremely extroverted. Like
Yeah.
I love to like, I get like I really love meeting people, and I love being in a room. Like we as you mentioned, met in a very big room of people. Like I love that. I really thrive in that scenario. But yeah, never really had a desire. It's not my calling.
So if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, so is influencing still something I can get into? Because I think one of the things, the traps of the online space is we see things and we're kind of like, I missed the boat on that, because this has been around for so long.
Yeah.
You say you've been in business 10 years. I felt like that when I started my social media agency. I was like, there's so many social media managers. Like, who's going to need this?
Yeah.
Like, lots of people.
Lots of people.
This. I'm
Yes.
surprised. What if someone is like, hey, I'd love to like be an influencer? Like, is there space for me like in this world?
Yeah, I mean a resounding yes.
Yeah.
For sure. I think there's niches that everyone can fit.
Yeah.
And I think like I guess my just like personal thought process on this is that I don't feel like you can do it if it's forced. If you're like, I want to be an influencer, like I think that's not the right tactic to have with it.
Yeah.
I love even now, like when we talk to talent and we're like, oh, like, why do you do this? And like, well, like when I was in high school, like I was kind of the one everyone came to for like, I was always the person like doing everyone's hair or makeup, or everyone was like raiding my wardrobe all the time. And like, oh, it made sense that you became like a style influencer. Like you were influential in your friendship group or in your family or in your community. You were that person. And it just makes sense that expanded with the help of the internet. So I think there's like, if that is your personality type, if you find that like when we're talking to new talent, we're like, what do people come to you for? Just like not online, just like in general. Like, are you the person giving advice? Are you the person drafting the texts for the boyfriends? Are you the person giving fashion advice? Like what do people come to you for, and what do you think you're known for? And then if those things like come very naturally and authentically to you, there's probably a space to like expand that in a different kind of way. So I think like my answer will always be yes. There's like, I don't think there's a cap on influences. Yeah. I think we see now shorter cycles for sure. I think especially on TikTok, you see people going to have their moment and then they're like, poof, disappeared, gone forever. And you're like, whoa, I used to see that person every day for like a year and then they're just gone. So I think like fads, if you will be like those cycles of that will be shorter online. Trends are extremely short online. Like I feel like a trend is a week long max and then like you're done. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if people who kind of create those trends can hold them and hold some like celebrity in that, or if they kind of just die out. But yeah, I think there's space for a new trend, new person.
Thanks so much for listening to Community with me, Kristina Bartold, and I'm just so excited to continue the conversations. If you're looking to grow your community and learn more about social, join us at thesocialbusinessclub.ca and use the code podcast to get your first month for $1. Share this episode with your friends and on social, or leave a review. It means the world.